When you're a kid, crossovers hold a special place in your heart. They feel like a major event, something big you just can't miss. Like when the Power Rangers met the Ninja Turtles, or when the Rugrats and the Thornberrys starred in a movie. One animated series that pulled off not one, but 4 crossover episodes was Lilo and Stitch the series, so I decided to pay them all a revisit. Hi, I'm Dr. Panda, the only panda whose nose kinda looks like an open mouth with teeth, and in this video, we're reviewing each one of them. Were they actually good, or has nostalgia clouded our judgment? It's time to find out. But as a little spoiler, I noticed some of the guest characters in each crossover tend to get sidelined to keep the episodes from feeling too crowded. You'll see what I mean. Let's start with episode 13 of season 2, titled Morphome. The episode starts with Lilo being dragged by Stitch to a hotel where the International Skate Invitational Competition is about to take place. While admiring the Velociraptor 1200, Keone, who Lilo is completely in love with, laments that he won't be able to compete because his dad is sadly taking him on an all-expenses-paid vacation to the beaches of Australia. I know, poor guy. Lilo is heartbroken over her crush as she stares at the photo she has of him, which isn't creepy at all since she also has pictures of random half-naked overweight strangers. But then, she comes up with the absolute master plan of learning skateboarding and winning the prize for Keone. Except she sucks at it. After her first major wipeout, she accidentally knocks a containment orb into a fountain, awakening this episode's experiment, Morphome. This triggers a chase that lasts for... okay, I thought it would last longer. By the way, I realized Instagram is lacking nostalgia-loving pandas, so follow me. Lilo and Stitch take Morphome to Jumba, who explains that he's a shapeshifter, capable of turning anyone into an exact duplicate of someone else, as long as Morphome has a reference image of the person. But Lilo has more pressing concerns. She goes to sign up for the skateboarding competition, but gets rejected for being too young. And you can probably guess where this is going. Lilo takes advantage of Morphome's convenient abilities to transform into Keone. And this is where we finally meet the guest stars of the episode when Jake Long, his Gramps, and friends show up. While Jake is excited to compete, the real reason for their visit is to find and protect magical creatures. But then, Gramps spots something magical alright: Mrs. Hasegawa. Lilo enters the competition pretending to be Keone, but her performance is so disastrous she literally, almost, dies. And the worst part comes when she gets hit with catastrophic news. Keone has a girlfriend. Lilo dumps Keone's girlfriend despite Stitch's disapproval, and, needing a second chance to win the skateboard, she decides to use Morphome again, this time to transform into the first contestant she finds and steal their spot, which just happens to be Jake. But Jake spots Keone taking Morphome away and believes a magical creature is being kidnapped, so he springs into action to save it. Jake transforms into dragon form and then gets captured by Gantu, who mistakes him for Morphome. As for Lilo, she arrives just as registration closes, and with that goes her chance to win the prize. We cut back to Gramps, who notices Mrs. Hasegawa is furious because her fruit store's sponsorship logo is way too small. So he uses his ancient dragon powers to graffiti it onto one of the competition ramps. And thus, an elderly love story begins. The competition announcer calls Jake Long's turn, but he's nowhere to be found. So Lilo realizes this is her last shot at winning that skateboard and impersonates him. And here I gotta say that I love how the subplots of the episode intertwine and impact each other. That's some great writing right there. As Gantu prepares to beam Jake up to the Hamsterville mothership, the Dragon Boy explains that his show is about saving magical creatures, not aliens or sci-fi nonsense, and then breaks out of the containment pod, which honestly makes me wonder why he didn't do that sooner, but oh well. Lilo gets ready for her final attempt to win that skateboard, but seriously, what was her plan here? Practice twice and hope that would be enough to win an international competition in this discipline? Stitch and Foo Dog both cheer for Lilo/Jake, but when they spot each other, they immediately pretend to be normal dogs, which is just hilarious. Lilo fails yet again, because duh, and meanwhile, Gantu captures the real Morphome. Jake's friends meet Stitch, who informs Lilo about his cousin's disappearance, and to make matters worse, the real Jake shows up and comes face to face with his imposter. Stitch attacks Jake, sending him crashing into a coconut palm, thus fulfilling one of animation's most sacred laws, which states that when a character hits a coconut tree, coconuts must fall on their head. After an extended fight scene, Lilo comes clean about everything, including her master plan to win the Velociraptor 1200 so Keone would fall for her. Jake and Spud think it's a solid plan, but Trixie gives Lilo the hard truth. Love comes from within and can't be bought. After a heartfelt moment, the group hatches a plan to rescue Morphome from Gantu's clutches. In equally important news, Gramps runs hand in hand with Mrs. Hasegawa along the beach. The group launches their assault on Gantu to save Morphome, but the galactic brute manages to keep hold of the experiment. Except the experiment Gantu captured was actually Spud. So, in a final surprise attack, Gantu gets defeated and transformed into an adorable bunny that Morphome had seen earlier in the episode. But not everything's resolved yet. Cue Keone's girlfriend, showing up in tears over their breakup. Gramps says his goodbyes to Mrs. Hasegawa and the Jake Long crew takes off. Just as Lilo's about to deal with the whole girlfriend situation, Keone himself shows up to set the record straight with Sarah, stating he only sees her as a friend and that she needs to stop telling everyone they're dating. And as the cherry on top, Lilo discovers Morphome's one true place, the costume shop. This episode was super entertaining, and I loved how all the subplots kept intertwining until they practically became one. My only gripe is that Jake Long didn't feel super relevant to the main story, though I get it since Lilo and Stitch are the real stars of the show. Also, one thing that never got properly explained is the reason Jake and crew were in Hawaii to begin with. They said they were protecting magical creatures, but we never actually saw any magical creatures in the episode, which makes me wonder, did they just throw a dart at a map and it happened to land on Kauai? It's okay, I can live with that. Honestly though, the whole Gramps and Mrs. Hasegawa subplot was so random and I love it for that. Also, I have no idea why Pleakley was pretty much MIA throughout the whole episode, but that's about to change in the next crossover episode, titled Spats, which I'm gonna go ahead and say is not one of my favorites, but you'll see why in a sec. The episode kicks off with Lilo and Stitch promoting the grand reopening of Jumba and Pleakley's Bed and Not Breakfast. Pleakley explains they're fully booked for the weekend with a special visit from Mr. Cooper, a reviewer from a major travel magazine, so everything needs to be perfect, and most importantly, peaceful and quiet. Cue the arrival of their other guests, and this episode's crossover stars. By the way, if you enjoy the content of this fluffy panda and would like to support the channel, you can become a member by clicking the join button down below and get access to exclusive panda emojis, badges, and even some videos while you're at it. Like I was saying, enter this episode's special guests, the Proud Family, who are anything but quiet. When the Proud Family starts bringing the noise, Pleakley almost has a panic attack about Mr. Cooper's review and desperately tries to control the chaos, but fails miserably. Meanwhile, we learn the Proud Family lost their luggage, which includes the notebook Penny desperately needs for her school assignment. And just when things couldn't get worse, a squirrel chucks a containment orb right as Sugar Mama's taking a bath, unleashing this episode's experiment, Spats, who's designed to make any two people fight each other. And yeah, Gantu's already on it. Lilo teaches a stressed out Penny the concept of shaka, which means hang loose and roll with it, inspiring her to write her assignment about their vacation adventures. That way, she can have fun and get her work done at the same time. Meanwhile, Oscar and Trudy finally get some alone time to relax after Oscar's been complaining nonstop throughout the trip, until Spats shows up and turns their romantic moment into a screaming match. The same thing happens between Jumba and Mr. Cooper, so when Pleakley's guided tour begins, literally, everyone hates each other's guts. Lilo, Stitch, and Penny realize Spats is behind all this chaos, so there's a change of plans. Hawaiian vacation's over and a new mission's on the horizon, to catch Spats before Gantu finds him. But then Spats appears and starts blasting his rays at every extra in sight, and Mrs. Hasegawa too, turning the entire island into one big fight club. Pleakley's tour gets interrupted by Gantu, who's trying to capture Spats himself, so Lilo, Stitch, and Penny join the chase too. Just when they lose Spats, Lilo starts freaking out, so Penny decides to give her a taste of her own medicine by telling her to shaka it off. The two become best friends for a whole 3 seconds until Spats zaps them with his ray, turning them into mortal enemies. Spats sneaks onto Pleakley's tour vehicle and escapes its pursuers, including Gantu. The tour reaches its final destination, the smack-up throwdown Hawaiian style, where Spats keeps blasting random extras. Penny and Lilo storm off in opposite directions, until Penny uses an ancient technique passed down from her mother to break Spats' spell. Counting to 10. Spats falls right into Penny's arms, only for Gantu to show up. Sugamama arrives to defend her granddaughter, but Spats hits them both with his ray, leading to an all-out brawl that will soon be taken to the wrestling ring. Penny teaches Lilo her technique, freeing her from the trance. But how can they make everyone else count to 10? Well, the solution is simpler than you'd think. When Sugamama knocks out Gantu in the ring, the entire crowd starts counting the 10 count, breaking the spell at last. Lilo delivers Spats to the wrestling promoter, finally discovering his one true place. But the happy ending isn't quite complete, because when Pleakley opens the newspaper, he finds a scathing review from Mr. Cooper. But just before he falls into depression, Lilo and Penny burst in with another paper. Penny's article was so good, it got published. And the best part is that it gives Pleakley's hotel a glowing review. To be honest, this wasn't one of my favorite crossovers. While it definitely captured the Proud family's chaotic dynamic when they arrived at the bed and not breakfast, especially Oscar constantly complaining about their travel mishaps, I felt the constant bickering between characters became repetitive and actually hurt the episode's pacing. Even though it's the standard 22 minutes like every other episode, this one somehow felt longer and more tedious at times, mostly because too much runtime was eaten up by characters arguing about trivial matters without actually moving the plot forward. That said, the natural chemistry between Lilo and Penny when they helped each other out was genuinely heartwarming, and this panda definitely appreciated those moments. Now, when it comes to interesting dynamics, we've got to talk about the next episode, titled Rufus. And yeah, you probably know who the guest characters are in this one. Also, let me know which other series you'd like to see covered in a future video. This episode starts completely differently than the others. Lilo and Stitch are playing hide-and-seek in the wilderness when suddenly, bam, a mysterious spaceship appears and kidnaps Stitch. Lilo races home to alert Jumba and Pleakley, demanding they use their ship for a rescue mission. But for some reason, Jumba couldn't care less, just giving her a smug grin while explaining their ship is now the bed and not breakfast, so it's not available. But Jumba's indifference doesn't stop there. When Lilo declares she'll go alone, he flashes that same cynical smile and reminds her that she's not allowed to go on dangerous missions without Stitch, only to then continue his daily activities like nothing happened. Enter Pleakley with a brilliant idea as he flips open a magazine featuring Kim Possible on the cover. Where the heck is Nani? We're 3 crossovers deep, and she's still nowhere to be found. Anyway, Jumba reads Kim's resume and is thoroughly impressed, while Lilo gets jealous because she feels she can save Stitch by herself. But Pleakley couldn't care less, so he sends an email to Kim and kicks back to wait. Meanwhile, we finally learn who Stitch's kidnapper is. Draen, who's now teamed up with none other than Hamsterveal. Lilo reaches her breaking point and tries to sneak off solo, but Pleakley catches her mid-escape, forcing Lilo to scramble for an excuse. Seriously, do these two even care about Stitch? Or Lilo, for that matter? Just as this awkward confrontation peaks, Kim Possible makes an almost grand entrance through the window. Lilo reluctantly briefs her and Ron on the situation, and then Kim and Pleakley kinda have a moment or something. While Lilo's talking with Kim and Ron, Rufus peeks out from Ron's pocket and gets spotted by Jumba, who tells Pleakley the creature looks suspiciously like the extremely dangerous Experiment 607. Jumba tries to buy Rufus, but Ron flat out refuses, so the chunky alien then goes for the next best option, stealing him. This kicks off a chase that leaves the house empty except for Kim and Lilo, who decide to check out the crime scene. Kim basically wants Lilo to sit quietly while she does all the work, but Lilo finds the first clue, a glove with a tag saying it belongs to Dr. Draen. Kim rents a helicopter and parachutes out, forcing Lilo to return to the island. Meanwhile, Stitch manages to escape from Draen and Shigo, only to find the secret base is underwater, which is unfortunate because he can't swim. Back on the island, a frustrated Lilo runs into Jumba and Pleakley, who hold Rufus hostage, convinced he's actually a very dangerous experiment. Kim gets captured by Draen along with Stitch, so she calls Ron for help. Lilo overhears and gets pissed since now she has to save both Kim and Stitch. Draen proceeds to reveal his evil machine, which he'll use to clone Stitch and take over the world, or some evil stuff like that. Lilo and Rufus sneak into Draken's evil underwater secret base, but the villain mocks them for being weak and defenseless. That is, until Lilo uses Kim's grappling hook to free Stitch, and while Draen tries to recapture him, Rufus sabotages the machine. Lilo frees Kim, but Shigo finally shows up, after apparently taking a nap during the whole thing, to fight her. After an intense battle, Lilo, Kim, Rufus, and Stitch manage to escape as the secret base explodes behind them. But don't worry, Draen and Shigo are safe and sound. Lilo gets credit for saving the world, and Stitch sniffs Rufus to confirm he's just a regular naked mole rat. With everything resolved, the whole gang hits up a luau and dances in a 30-second scene that was clearly just filler to hit the 22-minute episode mark. I've gotta say I've always really liked this episode. It had tons of action and felt like the perfect blend of Lilo and Stitch and Kim Possible. For me, it struck just the right balance of giving both shows' characters their due spotlight while staying true to each series' tone and personalities. Plus, Kim and Lilo's evolving relationship is great to watch, especially when Lilo finally gets the recognition she deserves. The only thing I'm not completely crazy about is Jumba thinking Rufus was an experiment. It always felt a bit forced to me, since Rufus's visual design looks nothing like the experiments, but I guess they needed something for Jumba, Ron, and Pleakley to do while they weren't involved in the main story, so I get it. And so we reach the final crossover episode, and coincidentally, one that I really love, the 21st of the second season, titled Lax. This episode starts with something amazing we hadn't seen in any of the other crossovers. Nani actually gracing us with her presence, scolding Lilo for making a mess in the kitchen. Nani drives off to work, where she apparently spends the other 23 hours and 59 minutes of her day, but she accidentally activates Experiment 285, or Lax. Lax peeks through the kitchen window, and in a totally unrelated event, Stitch starts acting extremely relaxed. Jumba examines him and theorizes it might be 285, designed to make an entire population stop working and feel like they're on vacation. Right on cue, Pleakley and Jumba get hit by a ray and become the most relaxed versions of themselves. Lilo spots Lax on the roof and dodges one of his rays, but when the experiment tries to escape, Lilo drags Stitch after him. They follow the trail of relaxed people to a hotel where they run into this episode's special guests, the Recess Gang.
But why are they in Hawaii?
While Spinelli thinks they're on vacation, Gretchen explains they're actually her research assistants for an astronomy investigation. In other words, she's convinced she's discovered a new planet in the solar system, and they're here to visit the observatory with her and find out. Stitch steals Gus's drink, and officially the two shows collide. But introductions don't last long because Mikey gets hit by Lax's ray. Meanwhile, Gantu's computer alerts him about a newly activated experiment, but he's waiting for the new satellite to pinpoint its exact location. Hamsterville pressures him to go after Lax anyway, so Gantu reluctantly heads out before the satellite's ready. Lilo and the Recess Gang take cover to avoid Lax's attacks, but Vince gets zapped and becomes completely relaxed. This motivates TJ to decide that the group will help Lilo capture Lax, and here we learn the Recess Gang didn't come to Hawaii alone, but with a chaperone, Miss Finster, who's been at the spa this whole time. Gretchen figures out Lax isn't from Earth, which Lilo confirms, while asking her to keep it secret. A chase leads them to the observatory, where Gretchen uses the telescope to find the new planet she's been researching. Except, it's actually Gantu and Hamsterville's evil satellite. When Lilo and Gretchen exit, they find TJ and Spinelli completely relaxed. Not good. The group takes shelter in the observatory, but when Galileo tries to share his plan with Gretchen, he gets hit by Lax's ray. It's not all bad news though, as this reveals the ray works on machines too, perfect for disabling the satellite. Just as Gretchen is about to finish her calculations to aim at the satellite, Lax zaps her, sending her on vacation, and now everything is doomed. Except that for Gretchen, work is fun, so she happily keeps crunching numbers. When Lax gets ready to shoot Lilo, Stitch appears to disable him, because disabling cousins is fun for Stitch, so he can still do it while in a trance. Don't ask why he didn't do it earlier. With Lax tame, they use his powers to blast the evil satellite, which explodes into fireworks. Gantu appears, but Lax zaps him into relaxation, saving everyone. Cut to the airport farewell where everyone's back to normal with no explanation given, and Lax has found his one true place, relaxing stressed out tourists. And the episode ends with Finster at the spa, completely unconcerned about the kid she was supposed to be chaperoning. This was probably my favorite crossover of all, in part because I've always been a huge Recess fan, but also because I just found it to be super fun. The interactions between Lilo and the gang feel completely natural and never out of place, and the story was pretty enjoyable for me. That said, there's one thing I never loved: how each of the Recess gang members gradually get sidelined after being hit by Lax's ray. First we lose Mikey and Vince, and then TJ and Spinelli, leaving only Gretchen and Gus with Lilo by the end. I get that this was probably to prevent the episode from feeling too crowded, as with Lilo, Stitch, and the Recess gang that would have made 7 main characters, which might just be too many. But I feel like they could have balanced the spotlight between characters instead of just getting rid of them one by one from the start. In fact, this kinda happens in all 4 crossovers, where some of the guest characters get sidelined into very minor subplots. Gramps dating Mrs. Hasagawa in the Jake Long episode, the rest of the Proud Family stuck on Pleakley's tour, and Ron trying to save Rufus from Jumba and Pleakley in the Kim Possible crossover. I get why they did it, since there's always that trade-off between giving everyone screen time and keeping the story focused, but I would have loved to see at least Ron and the whole Recess gang more involved in the main action. Not complaining though, as I had a lot of fun revisiting these episodes.
By the way, remember the Tarzan animated series?
I made a video revisiting the show and explaining why it'll never be on Disney Plus, and you can check it out right here. Subscribe for more. Dr. Panda out.